What's up guys, today we're going to go over an acronym I learned in exercise science over like progression for clients. So it's FITTVPP. So when we're talking about that, we're talking, the F stands for frequency. It's how often are we training or how often are we doing an exercise. When we're talking intensity, it can be a percentage of 1 rep max, which is the most often way you see things prescribed. It can be RPE, rate of perceived exertion, where we're looking at basically how does the client feel. You'll normally go through like a 1 through 10 with the client is what you're saying. 1 being the easiest thing in the world, to 10 being the worst thing they've ever done, they're about to die. Reps in reserve is another way you can do it, where you're telling a client like you want 2 or 3 reps in reserve that they'd be able to do if they kept going, which can be a better way of doing things because some people have a harder time rating their RPE from 1 to 10, where like there's 7. Some people's 7 will be closer to the 10, and some people's 10 will be more like some 6. So when we're looking at meters per second, that's when you're doing like velocity-based training. There's going to be certain speeds you want the bar to go as they're training to train the need that we want. Normally this meters per second will correlate back to this percentage of 1 RM. Now when we're looking at time, we're talking about the rest period times. You'll often see like in the textbooks, 3-minute rest for strength and power, things like that, where you want fully recovered, or like a minute, anywhere between 30 seconds to a minute and a half for hypertrophy, things like that. That's textbook. Real world, we got stuff to do. You often like are pairing things with mobility or another exercise so they can rest, but we're doing things. We're not in a situation where we're just sitting there doing nothing. When we're talking tempo, there's 2 different ways of actually writing it, but it's also tempo is the speed that we want the bar to go at in like seconds. You're often looking at like the 4-digit method for this is your lowering or eccentric portion first, your bottom stop, and then your lifting concentric, and then the top stop. So like a 3-2-X1, that would be 3 seconds on the way down, 2 seconds where you're going to stop at the bottom or in your isometric contraction. Then X, anytime you see an X, is as fast as possible, and then a 1. You'll see normally in like with athletes, you're going to see a lot of 1s in the concentric portion because the goal is always to drive the weight as fast as possible. When we look at like the 3-digit method of doing it, it's your eccentric, then it's that isometric, then your concentric. So like that would be written 3-2-X, so you're just knocking off the last number, where you would just stop in between a rep to do the next. Now when you also write your tempos, normally you're gonna write more details just because most of the time this may not make sense to the client, or there's more specific reasons on why you're doing it, like slow eccentric RDLs, or you can even get into some triphasic training where a lot of that is based around like your eccentrics and your isometrics in certain time periods as you're going through triphasic. When we're talking volume, we're talking reps times weights times sets is what makes up your total volume. So from like week to week, we could be increasing just the reps, or you can increase the weights. Like if you talk starting strength, it's normally you're trying to add like 5 pounds to the bar each week. Then, or you can increase the amount of sets. That's going to increase your total volume. That's the traditional way of measuring volume. There's other ways that do it and that are more complicated than that. When we're talking progression, it's how are you progressing the exercise. So like with adult clientele, you'll see me go goblet box squat first for safety to get them comfortable squatting, not only to the depth I want, but like it's also gives them a spot to where if they get stuck, they can just sit down. With it, I often go from a higher box to the lower box to the height I want to get to. Then we'll transition to like a goblet squat. And then I like going to a safety bar squat with most older clientele, because then you're not asking them to get in an uncomfortable position, and I'll have them squat to a box and then build up to a safety bar by itself. When we're talking periodization, we're talking long-term plans. So it can be the week-to-week build up over the full year, or it can be like week-to-week till you transition to the next phase. So you could be doing strength training where you're focused on muscular strength. So overall, like 1 rep max strength for like 4 weeks, and then moving to hypertrophy for 4 weeks, or it can be longer periods than that. But that's your periodization. And that is what FITTVPP